So today we're going to talk in English for our session of Les Échanges Entrepreneurs. So we're going to talk about Lynda Hoffman, who specialized in ADHD with entrepreneurs. So it's going to be something a little bit different, but Lynda is a client of mine, and I'm really happy to be able to have her on this podcast. Hello, Lynda.
Hi, Christelle. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So it's a baptize for both of us because I'm doing the first one in English and it's your first, second podcast, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to introduce, so you can take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself and tell us what you do and what sphere do you your expertise in it.
Thank you. I am a professional certified coach, and I've been working for many years with adults with ADHD. And in particular, now my practice is focused on leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs, people who have a lot of responsibility or want to have a lot of responsibility, and they want to be at their very, very best. And I think the big thing to know is that the people I work with are professionals and entrepreneurs, and you can be professionals and entrepreneurs and have ADHD.
Yeah, and actually, when we met, I talked about you that I do have ADHD. It's not officially a diagnosis, but still, I have all the symptoms, as we can say, and it's something really different than a regular entrepreneur because we have so many things in our head.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with somebody this morning, a really creative young adult, and talking about how he has all of these ideas and the second guessing comes up without seeing that his creativity comes from the ADD.
Okay.
He's an out of the box thinker, and that's why he does what he does so well.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best characteristic that ADHD people has is that they think outside the box because it's we have too many things inside our head and some of them are popping, but there's a lot of difficulties that comes around with the entrepreneur that has ADHD.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah, and that's how what you specialize in actually it's to help them focus on what they should do, what they can do, and that it's not necessarily a problem to be ADHD.
No, it's just learning how to manage the way your brain is.
And
It
how does
doesn't,
an ADHD brain works? That's the whole question.
well, I think the most important thing to be aware of with ADHD is that what you know you want to do and maybe should do, and I don't like using shoulds, but you know what to do, but you don't do it in the right time. It's as if something cuts in half those two parts of the brain. And that's what makes it so frustrating to execute what really creative people need to do to be successful in their businesses.
And what should they do to help them with that?
Well, if it's an issue of execution, then it really is about learning where that shows up. It's not everything that's a problem. For example, I have or had a client a long time ago who owned a very large business and he had been doing really well, but by over focusing on details, he was exhausted.
Okay.
And so that was draining him. And so he was never executing on the big picture ideas that he really wanted to be doing. So that meant identifying where he needed to make changes so that he could pull out of the details and be more focused on the bigger picture for his business. So it really depends on the person.
Okay.
Some people are fantastic in the bigger picture. They've got visionary ideas and they have difficulty translating it to the people below them who don't have the same brain. Or people like this past client who are really focused on details.
So you mean that he was focusing on small details that didn't matter to the company and he was wasting a lot of times, or he wasn't?
Well, if they were important, but he was micromanaging.
Okay.
Because he wanted to be the go-to person and he ended up being the go-to person for absolutely everything.
Okay.
And then recognizing, well, I can't do that all. I really need to trust my employees to do what I've asked them to do, but they don't do it. So I need to figure out how to do that.
Okay. So, and can you tell us what he did after?
It was cleaning up the things that were getting in his way. So, for example, he knew he needed to make staffing changes so that he did have staff that really did do and execute for him in the way that he needed them to do it.
Okay. So it's more something about the selection of the people who works with him, better people, so he can less macromanage and be more on the top of the business.
And it also meant inside of him learning how to resist the impulse to step in the moment.
Mm.
Because it's so easy to get hooked by, oh my gosh, I think that employee's not doing what I need them to do. So it's resisting that impulse.
And I think there's a lot of entrepreneur that does that too. We want to have the hand on everything. We want to be sure that it's done our way and not the way of the employees. So I think it's a big problem that for even the people that are not ADHD.
I would agree with you completely.
Yeah.
It's a balance. We balance our attention, we balance our time, we balance our focus. We all need to be more aware.
Yeah. And is it true that people that has ADHD are always all over the place?
No, no, it's not a problem of focus.
Okay.
ADHD is a problem of knowing when to focus,
Okay.
focusing at the right time. And when you are focused on something, people with ADHD can be incredibly well focused, so focused that they don't stop what they're doing in the moment to take to take a look at the bigger picture and shift to what might be a more useful use of their time.
Okay.
So it's not a problem of focus.
Okay. Well, sometimes if I think about myself, I focus on something, I'm into it, and then there's like a noise, and my focus is totally somewhere else. Now I hear everything around, and I cannot concentrate anymore. So I'm like, I have to be a multitask person. I cannot do one thing for 2 hours. I have to have more stuff to do or stuff to think about, or being with somebody, because I'm a coach. So when I'm with somebody, it's easy because you focus on them and it's not like a writing task or something like that. So it's easy for me. But 2 hours after that, my brain is somewhere else.
Yeah. You have beautifully described three things, at least three, that are very common with ADHD. And one is the distractibility.
Mm-hmm.
That will interfere with your focus. So it's learning how to make sure you've got an environment that you can focus in when you know it's important to focus on it. Another is people with ADD are at their best when they're with other people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that's been studied enough, but there's something about the social relationship that really focuses people with ADHD.
You're right. I cannot explain it, but because you
Yeah.
tell me, I'm thinking about every time that I'm really focused on something, it's when I'm not alone.
Yeah. My theory about that is that when you're not alone, and to a degree, this is with everybody, that we're more focused because we're socially connected.
Okay.
And social connection is everything for
Okay.
most people because we're social beings.
You're right. You're right. And I think, well, I'm not sure, but I think when I'm with somebody else, my focus is not on myself and what I have to do, is on their self. So I think my brain is functioning differently, but not when I'm in a class or something like that and the teacher talks. Really, when I'm with a client or
Yeah.
people and we're thinking about a project or stuff like that. But yeah, I do get it. I do get it.
Yeah,
And
you
I
mentioned
never
something
noticed
else,
it.
and you mentioned something else there. Um, Shoot, it's just going out of my head now.
The teacher?
Yeah, classrooms are a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Focusing outside yourself
Mm-hmm.
is easier than focusing inside.
Yeah.
This is really key because with ADHD, very few people are aware that they have thoughts that can drive their actions.
Okay.
ADHD. The impulse or desire or the habit of turning inward is not the same for people with ADHD. And I think this is because the dopamine seeking is always external. Where can I get the next hit of interest, of high dopamine, of energy, of what I need to feel like I'm productive in the day outside themselves?
Okay, so they focus more on the other people than on themselves.
Yes, which is why you'll have entrepreneurs who get caught in the details with their employees.
Okay. Okay. Oh, when you get back to your clients, how he was
Yeah.
focusing on details instead of the big picture.
Yes, exactly.
So it's really special how ADHD, ADHD, it's just a word, but it means so many things to so many people. And I think I know a lot of people who has ADHD. One of my son is probably more than one, but one diagnosed. And I think that when I see myself, I see him, or I see my friends that has ADHD, none of us are necessarily doing or thinking the same way than they are.
Yeah. It is a different way of perceiving the world and of thinking about the world.
So
What have you
everybody's
noticed
different.
is what have you noticed is different?
For example, for my end, I have to do when I want to listen or I want to be like focused, for example, with in a class with a teacher, I need to write everything. When I write, and you'll notice this in our sessions that I'm always like writing. I have always like a Word document open and I type in. I have to do something else. So my brain focus, because I'm typing in, my brain focus on what you're saying. He's automatically translating it with my typing. And even if I never look at them after, I remember. But if I don't do anything, I notice that it goes through and something else. My son, he has to touch something. He has to always play with a pencil. And my other son, if there's something on his desk, he focus on everything else, but never the teacher or never something that you're thinking about. So we're same family, and three ways to grab what the other person is listening or telling us.
You're absolutely right. There is no one version of ADHD or even five. It's something like 600 or 700 different varieties
Oh, okay.
because of the many, many different symptoms. And so you can have some people who don't meet the criteria of ADHD, but they're still hugely impaired in one area,
Okay.
like emotional regulation, for example. But they can plan and organize pretty well,
Okay.
but they're very dysregulated in other ways.
Okay.
But you mentioned something else very interesting, and that is when you're taking notes in our sessions,
Yeah.
and your son also, uh, it's movement. When you move your body, your brain is going to be more focused.
Okay.
It's a way of creating more energy in the brain.
Okay. I didn't notice that. I
Yeah.
never, well, I started to think about it when we talked about it together. And, but before that, it's something that I did without even thinking. So I know my son does the same thing. He plays with everything. So, but I never noticed that it's helping your brain to focus more. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, a great thing to do is go for a walk and record what
Okay.
you're thinking.
Okay.
If you have a creative project going, or there's something that you really want to tackle, go for a walk and
Okay.
then see what happens.
Okay, so next time I need to bring my phone with me and record,
Yeah,
or else I do think about a lot of things, but I come home and I forget.
exactly.
And what are the biggest challenges that you see when you meet a client? What are their biggest challenges?
It depends on the client, but overall,
Yeah.
the biggest is getting over the belief that there's something wrong with them, that they've identified with the ADHD and the struggle to actually show how smart they are, that somehow that has been fused with their identity, that they identify with the lack of order, they identify with the chaos. Well, I'm just that way. This is who I am. And there's a lot of shame that can go with it because these are people who are really capable and not able a lot of the time to show it when they really need to show it.
Okay.
And so shame is one of the worst crippling challenges for many people I work with.
So they have to first accept it.
You have to see who they are underneath. The ADHD is here. It's something in their brain, yes, but who they are is different.
Okay.
They're the totality of all of who they are. They're still a part of the brain, even if you've got ADHD, that's going to be watching the ADHD behavior.
Okay. And ADHD is what? It's a debalancement. Sorry, and maybe it's not the correct word, but what it is exactly.
Oh, that's a good question. It's you could call it a disorder of executive functioning. That is the brain-based skills for showing what you know, planning, organizing, managing distractions, getting started on things, stopping at the right time. Emotional regulation. So that's a really big one. So it's regulating focus, regulating your output, regulating how you are emotionally. So some people with ADHD will find themselves activated quickly. They go from 0 to 100 in a second.
Okay. So it's more a way of the how the brain is thinking than it's not a disease. It's not a problematic. It's just something that you have to live with it, or it's better when you use medication to adjust it.
Well, you can. I'll talk about medication in a moment, but I don't think of it as a disease. I just think of it as a brain difference
Okay.
that actually does impair the ability to work with time effectively.
Okay.
And not everybody with ADHD will have that particular challenge, but it's the very, very common one.
Okay.
And so it does create impairment. Not everybody's going to have it that way, but some people, most people do. And what did I want to say about that? People with ADHD are at 4 times higher risk for alcoholism or addiction.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, much higher risk for anxiety, much higher risk for depression
Okay.
and other disorders that can go with ADHD when it's untreated.
Okay.
When it's treated, usually those other challenges are made much, much better.
Okay.
Now,
And
you said something.
you mean treated? I'm still taking the medication, or just treated like in a way you can control yourself.
Both.
Okay.
For some people, medication is a given. They try it and they notice, wow, it's like a light switch went off. And it just gives them enough mental energy to implement the strategies they learn in coaching.
Okay.
Other people choose not to do it and they just do the coaching. But either way, treatment is considered to be both.
Okay. Okay. And what medication? There's so many, and I know you wrote an excellent article about that on your blog. And it's not something that everybody have to take, but some of them it helps to be more focused. It helps to be more, like you said, like your brain is liberated. But what's your point of view about that?
I've seen it reduce the suffering tremendously. And it's the individual's decision whether or not to do it. My opinion on that is get the facts before you make a choice about whether or not medication is right for you.
Yeah.
The fact is, it's not addictive. A lot of people are scared of that medication because they think that it is, but it's not. It's one of the most studied classes of medications out there. So if you really want to give it a chance, do it. And if you're going to do that, you want to be prepared to go back again and again and again to your doctor as often as needed to make sure you've got the right dose and the right one for you. Because as you say, they're all very different.
Yeah, and you don't want to become, some of them give, for example, if I take my son, I noticed that one of them, he was like a vegetable.
So it's not
So
working.
it wasn't working. And some of them, he was just like totally normal, but no appetite, but totally normal. And the doses, even if he was growing up, we kept small doses on him, because he didn't like it when we increased the dose, but it was still working. So his grades were up, and with even a small amount. So the doctor said, okay, we're going to continue on this dose until you see like a real big difference. So I think sometimes it's not big drugs, I don't know how you call that, but big pills. It's not necessarily a high dose that will function or just help you.
And generally in my practice, I've noticed that it's children and teens who benefit more.
Okay.
Generally. And that is a big generalization. And I think the reason for that would be that adults have more maturity, more wherewithal to implement their strategies, and the brain is developed more. But for some adults, they absolutely need it. They're not functioning without it. And by functioning, I mean going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a couple of friends that are ADHD and that are taking medication, and they say when I'm not, it's like I'm all dizzy all day and have too many things in my head at the same time, and I cannot focus on anything. So I know that some of them, they really need it. Some of them, like me, I don't take any meds. I think sometimes I would like to, but sometimes when I grew up, I think I caught myself some I don't know how to call it, but I give myself some tricks to help me to focus. For example, the things that I said, when I write everything down, or I have my calendar with everything in it so I don't forget some stuff, and I have a lot of reminders. So I think you're right. When we grow up, we have more help, or we know how to help ourselves. But I think when you have no choice, you have no choice.
And I suspect that there was something about you that you were able to become strategic. You were self-aware enough to notice, if I don't write it down, that's not working for me. And a lot of people with ADHD don't have that awareness.
Okay.
And that's where the medication comes in. So that when the focus is increased and they're better able to reflect on how they're working, they start noticing and learning about what does work.
So you if you could tell them, like, for example, some tricks or some hints to help them during the day, this would be a part of it, to write everything down.
Sure. Or find something to record what you're thinking. Because one of the big stressors for an entrepreneur, the amount of information you're holding in your head, that can create a lot of anxiety. And in ADHD, the working memory, the memory that holds information while you're working with it, doesn't function as well. So it's a bit like a sieve. It goes in and you're going to lose it. So your job is to find a place to put it somewhere reliably.
Yeah, you're making me think about the working memory. You're right. We do think when we're entrepreneur that everything that our people are telling us, we all remember so many details, so many stuff, but not necessarily the good ones, or not necessarily the one that we have to think about or discuss with somebody else. So I think, yeah, you have to be prepared, or to have something to write your ideas on, or something to record it so you won't forget anything. Or interpret,
yeah. To give yourself time to think about it properly.
Yeah.
I had a client once who, this was a while ago, 10 years ago, maybe, before it was routine for students to have laptops in university. And when he got his, it was like he didn't go anywhere without it.
Okay.
It was like his hard drive for his brain. Everything went in there. He had a system, it was organized, but nothing did not go in there. It reduced his anxiety by about 80%, and his functionality went up by the same.
Okay. So, and what about people that are saying, oh, my head is so everywhere, so I cannot write down what I'm thinking about?
Then they need to pause. They need to pause. That tells me that they haven't actually paused.
Okay.
Often when that's happening, they're trying to do it on the fly,
Yeah.
or they get it perfectly the first time it comes out. You just want to get it all out. There's no right way.
There's no, yeah. You have to find your way to help
Yeah.
you, or else you're always going to be somewhere, everywhere at the same time.
That's right.
And what are the best accomplishment of your clients when they finish with you?
Okay, here's one. This adult I met when he was 35. No, how old was he? Maybe 38.
Yeah.
And he was so anxious that he couldn't get out of his car to go to work. And he didn't know what his problem was. He ended up losing his job, having to move in with his parents again. His marriage failed. He suddenly just could not function and didn't understand what was going on.
Okay.
He was diagnosed about 4 or 5 years later with ADHD, and he was treated. And I coached him for about 6 years. That's an extraordinarily long period of time. Usually it's not like that.
Okay.
His case, he is now the head of a foundation.
Okay. Wow.
He has major responsibilities. He is married. He has a child and a family, and he is a contributing member of society.
Okay, that's amazing. And does he talks about what he went through?
Yes, he loves talking about it. He loves talking about it because he sees it in many of his friends, and he knows that suffering does not need to happen.
Yeah.
And he's frustrated because there isn't enough information out there or services for most people.
Yeah, there isn't. For adult, nothing at all. We see a lot of stuff for kids now, not a couple of years ago, but from a couple of years, since a couple of years for kids, there are really more resource. But for adults, it's like they don't want to talk about it. And especially when you're an entrepreneur and you succeed or you want to succeed, it's something that you don't talk about it because you want to be like always on the top.
Absolutely. And several of my clients have been physicians, and they haven't wanted to talk about it. It is not common knowledge where they work.
Okay.
So there's still a stigma out there.
Yeah.
That we really need to break down.
And it's not a real problem. It's just a way to function.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when people's going to talk more about it, people's going to be more open to talk about it too.
That would be wonderful.
And
so when I'm working with somebody, part of that is supporting them and advocating for what they need at the time, the best time.
Okay.
The right people.
That's good. And in conclusion, if you had only one thing to tell them, okay, you can say two if you want, but if you only have one or two things to say to an entrepreneur that has ADHD, what would it be?
Don't suffer alone. It's absolutely possible to make changes. And whether you have ADHD or not, everybody, every single one of us benefits from being coached because we don't see our blind spots, ADHD or not, but it is possible.
I like it. And Lynda, if we want to contact you, how do we do that?
My email is best, info@lyndahoffman.com. That's LYNDAHOFFMAN.
Good. And you have an amazing blogs with a lot of information on ADHD and on executive coaching too. So fun thing to read or subscribe to your newsletter.
Thank you, Christelle. This was so much fun.
Thank you very much for your time. So see you next time. And thank you very much for all.
See you, Christelle. Bye-bye.
Bye.